Hello and welcome to the Artist Forge live stream today on Self Portraits. My name is Nicole York. I'm going to be your host, and I'll be joined by your wonderful co-hosts, Matt Stagliano and Becca Bjorky and Bassam Saba. Welcome to the Artist Forge live, y'all. How is everybody? How was your week? If you're in the audience today, we want to hear from you too. Make sure that you comment, let us know you're here, and tell us how you're doing.
Everything's great. You kidding me? I'm sitting here with a red Solo cup full of wine with my friends. We're going to talk about art. Couldn't get any better than this.
Fair. How about you, Bassam? How was your week?
Oh, week was very good. Got a lot of work done. Yeah, just good overall. Happy to be here. Looking forward to it.
Nice. Becca, I'm hesitant to ask.
I'm chilling. I'm laying in bed. I'm chilling. I don't have a red Solo cup full of wine though, and I probably should change that. So
Absolutely do not. Think about future Becca. Future Becca does not want the hangover that future Matt's going to have.
does she? I mean,
He's like, but does she though?
Yes, well,
right.
I have a old pickle jar full of wine. So
nice.
that's
See,
right.
in different parts of the country, they're called different things. Here, mason jars. There, pickle jars.
Well, when I say pickle jar, I mean there used to be pickles in this jar.
Right.
And
But
I
it's-
kept it
it's
and
a
I
mason
cleaned
jar.
it. And now,
Let's
you know,
qualify the time period. Was it this afternoon?
no,
Or was it like 6 months ago?
no, it was a long time ago. It is
Okay.
technically a mason jar, but it wasn't. I didn't buy it as a mason jar. I bought it as a jar of pickles, and I was like, why should I throw this glass away when I could drink out of it in the future for free? So
You know what? Stick a
Recycling.
candlestick to the bottom of it, and now you've got yourself a chalice.
exactly, the
Do it
pellet with
yourself.
the poisons and the
glassware.
chalice from the palace.
Yeah.
If you ever happen to watch old Danny Kaye movies, The Court Jester, give that one a chance. It is the best. Erica is with us. Hello, Erica. So happy to see you.
Hi, Erica.
And Sisela here as well. Bibbidi
Bibbidi
boppity boo.
bobbidi buh.
Buh. If you're here today and you are watching from Facebook land or YouTube or wherever else you're hanging out, make sure you say hi so we can say hi to you. Whatever's happening with this bun is like slowly sliding off one side of my head, and it's throwing off my whole I should have been an Edwardian princess vibe, and I'm not very happy about it.
Is it throwing your center of gravity off?
It's like slowly sliding to the
You're
side.
tilting your
Or
head.
this side, you know.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm just tilting over to the side. So let's chat a little bit before we get started today about the conversation that we're going to have tomorrow, because on Monday we talked about validation as artists, and is that something we need? Should we be seeking after that? And if we know we need it and we want it, how do we deal with it without allowing it to be the driver? And a Facebook member, was it Josh who asked?
Jason?
Jason said, well, you know, sometimes I get a lot of validation from people, but they don't buy from me. So how do you reconcile these things? And I know we're going to have that conversation tomorrow. But friends in the audience, I know as artists, everybody has dealt with this. We crave that validation and we also need it from our clients. But sometimes the places we get it from are not always the places that we need it from. A lot, we'll have our family or friends say, oh, I love it. Are you going to sell these? And then you're like, shoot, I didn't think about that. Yes, I am. And then nobody buys them. So how do we reconcile those things? Like, how do we even start to think about that? My mama's here also. Hi, mama.
Hello.
Oh, she got a new phone so she can watch again because she's fancy now. So what do you guys think? Validation, friends in the audience, what do you guys think too? How do we start to connect these two things? The validation we want, the sales we want, how do those start to merge or meet?
Divorce the two. You can't look to the people that validate you for money, right? And I did this for a lot of years. Ask me how I know, right? So I did this for a lot of years, especially in my prior business. I was looking for validation amongst the people from which I was taking the photos, right? I was doing a lot of commercial work and I was trying to impress the manufacturers and I was trying to press the magazines and I was trying to press the editors and all this sort of stuff. And I wasn't really looking at it as I wasn't going about business the right way. And so what happened was I realized that business kind of failed. I moved out of it and into portraits, but I was still in the same mindset of trying to impress other photographers or, folks in the photo industry. And they're not the ones that pay my bills. The random people that have no idea what photography is pay my bills. And so I need to say, okay, well, if my driver is standing in a certain community, then go after impressing the photographers. But if my goal is to, keep the roof over my head and pay my bills and eat and that sort of thing, then I've got to move my focus and say, I may not get that same relative validation for my ego, but I understand that if I go towards a different audience, I might actually get paid. And it doesn't matter the validation. I can do that with personal work. I can do that, with other things from my archives. I can re-edit, stuff like that. But in order for me to have the best of both worlds, I've got to separate the two. I know that if I focus on the clients, the validation from the clients will come. But instead of chasing it from other peers, just know that if you do good work with the clients, the validation will come. I think it's just a backward thing that we're always in, where we're trying to be accepted, we're trying to grow, we're trying to impress other people, and we get caught up in that rather than focusing on the things that need to be focused on, which is just serving clients.
Yeah, totally agree that you got to separate the two. I remember when I started in photography, and I did quite a lot of shoots. I think something like 150 shoots in 2 years without being in business. I had no intent of making money. And across that, I got a bunch of people that actually wanted to pay me to do a photo shoot. But none of them did I recognize, because you get to recognize all the people that follow you, all the people that like your stuff, all the people that are engaged in whatever you're posting. And I was posting hundreds and hundreds of pictures, and not a single one was anybody I recognized. It was just random. They probably saw my work. I'm not saying they didn't like the work, but they're not your typical followers where you get the validation. And then when you separate the business from it, I think in business, there's two ways to get validation, right? It's what Matt just mentioned, which is when you do work for a client and you give them the service that you promise and you deliver on what you said you're going to do, you will get validated for that. But then you can also get validation for the business part of it. For taking the right steps, right? I intentionally did such and such. I decided to go with Google ads or Facebook ads, or I decided to use SEO properly, invest in it, and so on. And then you can see results, and you get validation from either from your customers going through that journey that you intentionally put in place. So validation does not have to be, when you're selling things, it's not only about customer satisfaction with the product. It's also, are you going about it the right way? And are you getting feedback and validation on that?
I think that's...
I'm sorry, Nicole. I was just going to say, you mentioned the word that I couldn't pull out, and that was intention. What's your intention? And I harp on this a lot, but yeah, that's exactly what I was going after. What's your intention with all this? I'm sorry, Nicole, go ahead.
No, that was great. I was just, I was thinking about the fact that you mentioned, well, you both kind of have said two things, which I think are interesting. What it comes down to for me is, what do we consider validation? And for some of us, and we talked about love languages. Bassam, you had mentioned that before. We talked about love languages. And as somebody who, one of the things that really motivates me is words of praise. I may be tempted to chase those words of praise, even when what I should be focusing on is money. But money is a validation, right? When somebody spends their time working and then says, my money is worth what you're selling, that is an entirely different kind of validation. And it pays your bills validation, right? But it doesn't always feel the same way as somebody going, wow, your work is so good. And you're just like, I feel really good about myself, right? Like those don't always feel the same. And so sometimes it can be really tempting for those of us who are motivated by those words of affirmation to find ourselves just naturally chasing that and then wondering why those people aren't also paying us, when we forget that their intention and their motivation also is coming from a different place, right? They maybe enjoy the work, but they don't value it in the same way that somebody who doesn't chase us around with praise, but will still spend their money does. Just want to grab, Sharon is here with us. Hello, Sharon. Jean saying, when you're just starting out and lack confidence in your work, building relationships with other photographers helps on many levels. But I would agree with Matt, to really make it a business, you have to separate the two. And that makes a lot of sense looking at the idea of, okay, so I'm going to save that validation seeking from the people I admire who can, when they tell me I'm doing a good job, it's because they know the field. But then I'm going to focus my efforts on turning that into business, maybe? What do you guys think? Oops,
Yeah.
sorry.
I think that's absolutely the case. I mean, there's the two sides of it, right? You can't really grow in this community without getting to know the community and working with other people. But I think for me, I know, just speaking only for me, is when I started in that and I started learning and getting in touch with a lot of different people, I had that imposter syndrome comparison thing pop up. And I started being like, okay, well, if I do this, then I'll approach as good as them and get the recognition that they get, and was chasing that rather than saying, okay, I learned something really cool from this person. How can I turn around and apply that to my business and make more money? And I didn't really do that for a while. And when I figured out what my intention was to impress other people. Once I reeled that in, I was just like, oh, I can actually make money doing the business instead of spending my time doing this frivolous stuff. So, but it's a weird thing. Like, you have to kind of take a hard look inside and see who you're doing this stuff for. Yeah, that's not easy.
I'm using now on kind of maybe getting a better grasp on what our like actual legitimate clients value. So Bassam mentioned like having those clients who he doesn't recognize. And I thought that was super interesting. And I've had absolutely that experience too, especially my highest paying or even most loyal clients. They're not out there. They're not, singing my praises on Instagram or, Facebook or whatever. They pop up in my inbox and they send me money and we have a healthy working relationship. And I think that I could more comfortably rely on those kind of people to go and refer me to other potential great clients than someone who is just out there giving those words of praise and words of validation publicly. So I wonder if there's kind of something in that client psychology, like what does someone value and how are they presenting that to us? And how do we then take that into our business and to cater to that particular motivator there for the client?
And it's probably a good idea too, to reconcile both that type of client and your own desire or need for affirmation, and start trying to see if you can flip that switch internally. It's not always easy to change how you value something, but if you can maybe put on repeat in your head, right? Like when you make those relationships and you're not necessarily getting the validation, but you are getting the money and you are getting the business, to go, hey, remember, this is validation too. This is validation of a different kind. If you can kind of change the way that you think about that so that you are putting more effort into getting the kind of validation that also gets you paid and not just the kind that makes you feel good on the surface.
Totally. What is the related root word here between value and validation? Because I feel like there's got to be something in there. I feel like they're related there, but maybe looking more at those values rather than the validation itself.
Well, I think it comes back to target clients, right? When you're in business and trying to make sales, it's all about target clients. And target clients, we've always said, are those that value what you do. Mm-hmm. And what we do as photographers or artists, I'm almost pretty sure that our usual, friends, family, people that we know, acquaintances, there's a very good chance they would never fit into our typical client. And that's the reason why you'll if you're looking for validation through sales, if you're selling art, it's the art buyers that will give you sale. It's not your 99.9% of the time, it's not somebody around you. It's not a friend, it's not a family member, and so on. So yeah, there's a relationship between value and the target customer, therefore your intention and what you're selling and to who.
I think there's something there in to be of worth, right? So value has to do with to being of worth, and then validation has to do with saying that something is actually what it claims to be. And usually is like in a legal sense, apparently according to the Latin root word. So, which of course French comes from Latin. So then it's all connected. But I think that validation at the core of it, whether it is from a client spending money or from somebody giving you praise, is at the core is your self-worth, right? And who you believe yourself to be and where you think your worth comes from. And my son and I actually had this conversation the other day. He doesn't like the fact that he bases a lot of his value on what he can do for other people. And he thinks if he can't do for other people, he must not be valuable as a person. And so he's not placing his value in his personhood like he should be, right? He's placing it in what he can do. And for a lot of us, I think we've built our identity as artists in our ability to create things that people love. And so getting that approval and saying, yep, you did. And so we're like, okay, I'm still valuable as a person. I'm still worthy as a person, when those things should not be tied in our heads, right? But they are.
You know, Nicole, that kind of ties into the conversation that you and I have been having around unidimensionality and multidimensionality and people making themselves a noun rather than a lot of different things. I'm a photographer, or I'm an artist, or I'm a candle maker, whatever. But you have so many other skills and talents, so that if you're not providing in one area, you have 1,000 other things that you can do to offer to people. So that's just really interesting to me that, you know, your son was already starting to recognize that he's one thing, not to get into your child's psychology, but I think it's just representative of how young you can be when you start to have these thoughts about what I can provide to someone versus all the other things that I can provide to everybody. And so, you know, if you're attaching your validation to one thing, you're robbing yourself of validation in so many other areas, whether that's from other people or from yourself. And so it's just, that was really interesting to me to hear that someone that young is already thinking along those lines. Change that, Nicole. There's your homework.
No, yeah, he's actually a really self-aware dude, and he asked me, you know, to be able to talk about that kind of stuff and maybe to talk to a therapist so he can address that, because he recognizes that that doesn't make him happy. I'm like, dude, you're like 10 light years beyond where anybody else is at 18. If you can see that and recognize it and go, you know what, this isn't something I want to be part of my self-identity. So
this is your 4-year-old, right?
Yeah.
Just tell him to join our clubhouse chats.
I know, I should. Like, wake up early enough, man.
Bassam driving subscriber counts. Nicely done, sir.
So Sharon saying, this may sound like a silly question, but is there a secret formula for finding your target audience? And I know we have to start moving along, but do we want to see, is there a way we can address this quickly? I know we can, Sharon, absolutely refer you. This is actually a conversation we've had. And I would go look back through the December podcasts because in our business section, we covered a lot of that. But if we had to give maybe a quick tip to Sharon on how we might be looking at finding our target audience, is there any advice we could give for that?
Yeah, I'm not sure if she means finding or both defining and finding. In other words, you got to define who they are before you find them, right? And we talked a lot about both in December. It's not a secret, but there's a process for defining your target clients, and there's multiple ways to find them. So I'm not sure which one she's referring to.
I think if I interpolated her question correctly, I would say, figure out what you love to shoot. Love that you would do every day with all the passion. What does that person look like? Define that avatar, and then figure out where they go and what they do, and go there and talk to those people. And it's really relatively that simple. Figure out what you love to shoot. Who is your ideal client in that? What does she look like? What does she act like? What's her income? And then start finding networking opportunities or places where you can go to interact with that type of person. What you'll find is that you find that audience and you love what you do. And that's just kind of like the perfect place to be. So at least start thinking about those things. Maybe not a foolproof formula, but it's what's worked for me.
Becca's
I'm
got
gonna
some
build
great.
with them.
Oh, good. Yeah, I was gonna make you go if you didn't say anything.
I mean, I will stand by my anti-demographic opinion very strongly. I feel like that's something that often a lot of people start with. And, you know, anytime you open a book or you go online, start looking how to figure out your target client, you want to start with your demographics. And I think you should ignore that, not completely, come back to it later. But the number one focus in finding that audience, I think, is really, really in their psychology and their behavior. And instead of worrying like what they look like, how old they are, where they live, I want to know where they go, like how they spend their time, like where do they go to lunch, like what do they do with their friends when they turn on Netflix when they get home at night and open their bottle of wine, what are they watching? Like I want to know what weird Facebook groups they're in and leaving comments in. Like that is the kind of behavior that is going to help really define the kind of person who is going to value the art that you create. So the more you can focus on someone's particulars of their personality and of what they mentally value, I think that's going to lead to the most success in finding that target audience.
So it's the why, right? So two people may go to the same salon. One goes every 6 months because her husband pays for it to spoil her. And the other person goes because they highly value their appearance and how they show up in the world. And so understanding that those two people might be part of the same demographic, one behaves in a certain way because of what their value system is. So getting to the why behind the behavior more important than the behavior.
100%. 100%. And then you figure out how you can insert yourself into those circles.
I'd like to just insert myself, please.
If I had to pick one demographic to completely ignore, you know, especially in the type of work I do anyways, it's the income, because that has absolutely zero bearing on whether they value photography, value what I do or not.
Yeah.
And I'll come back to what we talked about a lot in the business of art is the problem that you're trying to solve, right? It's the core to the story brand framework. It's what problem are you solving for people? And if you can fine tune that, then you have infinite possibilities to address it and you can find those right people. But I love what Becca said. Find where they go for lunch. Hang outside, press your face against the window, say, I'm your photographer.
Breathe
Might
really
be a little
heavily.
creepy. Depends on the place, but you never know. Might work. People are like, I like your tenacity. I enjoy that.
I respect that.
I respect that.
Okay, so I love that we got a chance to answer that question. And then, of course, tomorrow we will all be getting together bright and early at 7 a.m. Mountain Standard Time to have our normal morning walk and art talk, where we'll be talking more about this, about validation and where we get it, and the difference between validation and actual paying clients and how we can kind of reconcile those things. But it's time now to start getting into some of our exercises in visual literacy. This month was a self-portrait challenge. So we challenged our community to go forth and create amazing self-portraits in whatever medium they felt most drawn to, and in whatever way they felt communicated best what they wanted to say or explore about themselves. We removed ourselves from the running as the admins of the group. We did not want to take away the focus from our community members, but I did want to take some time for those of us who did contribute self-portraits just to kind of help get motivation going to create. Each of us went and made a self-portrait for a different reason. And I think maybe hearing us be able to describe the reasons that we made the self-portrait, some of the choices that we made might be a good opener before we start to see some of the incredible images that you as a community essentially voted for with your likes and your hearts. So we're going to start with Bassam, the self-portrait that you created, and then maybe you can just tell us a little bit about your intentions and why you made some of the artistic decisions that you made. Friends in the audience, if you're watching today, let us know what you think about this self-portrait in the comments. Give some feedback. Let Bassam know. Did he hit the mark for you? How does it make you feel? So Bassam.
Yeah. So first thing I want to say is I'm not a self-portrait person. I loathe it. I hate it. I can't stand it. I've been avoiding it. I've done it once before, and this would be a second time. Now I'd like to talk just a little bit about where this came from and why I decided to do it that way. As you know, I go away to do coaching for a week. I have to drive 6 hours either way. And on my way back last time was a Friday when you guys had and I couldn't join in the morning when you talked about self-portrait that day that you discussed, approach to self-portraits. And I was listening through the thing in my car, And Kat, at the end of the day, I mean, it was a whole bunch of talk about how you put emotion and expression and how you set it up but then Kat said at the end, we are all a puzzle. The whole thing is a puzzle, right? And I just thought, and I spent the next 5 hours thinking, you know what? I've never really explored. You know, I see myself in the mirror. I see myself sometimes on video, on Zoom, and so on. But I never really explored how people see me in different emotions and different feelings, right? And I actually spent the next few hours driving, putting myself in actual situations. So when you see infuriated or pensive or so on, I would think of situations with people around me and how I would react to them and how I would act with them, and put my face on and you know, say the words I would say. And then I went home, and the other day I ended up replicating that. I just sat in front of the camera, and a very simple setup, and I actually Googled a whole bunch of emotions and picked 15 of them, and I chose 12 of them. But it was intentional. Each emotion was intentional. It wasn't like I took a whole bunch of pictures and said, hey, what does this look like? So each of them was intentional, and I took maybe 10 to 30 pictures of each and validated my favorite ones with my wife. And, you know, she said, yep, that's it. That's you. And this is the result.
I would love to ask, how did you feel after that process? Because it sounds like you put a good amount of work into the process as a whole. Did you walk away from that with any kind of realizations or anything?
I almost walked away every step of the way, if you know what I mean. I almost didn't do it. I almost didn't retouch them, although there's not really much retouching. It's just turn them into black and white. And the only thing I walked away from, it's just the study of the human face, the how small, because I was looking at a total of about 450 pictures, and how small nuances make such a big difference, to a point where some of the pictures that I had put under a certain category, under a certain feeling, that to show to my wife, they ended up in a different one. When she looked at it, she says, no, that's not this, it's that. And it was so close that I would never be able to tell the difference myself, right? So so that's one technical thing I noticed in terms of how the facial expressions are so what's the word, so rich, I guess, in terms of. But as far as the process was very simple. I had to make it simple, because if I had to do a set and think of an intention and think of a whole kind of creative thing, I don't see this as it's creative in the sense that I had to put on those, get into character. But other than that, it was very, very simple. So it was easy for me to execute. I think that was the key.
Did you have any insights, any kind of self-insights during the process, or was it more like a physical exercise?
I just think I'm the most handsome guy in the world. That's the only thing I realized. No, I mean, that so much. I mean, I look at this and I think of what. No, I don't know if I have major insight. I actually I enjoyed the process of seeing how I look to others, validating how I look to others, and in some cases I can't believe that's what people see, but that's me. And then I said, oh, maybe it'll be cheesy if I put it in a puzzle form as opposed to just. And I said, hey, what the hell? We'll make it a puzzle. It'll look cheesy, but there it is.
I'm curious, Matt, Becca, and friends in the audience. Which one of these is the version of Bassam that's in your head? Like, when you look at these, which one is your Bassam? Because I know there's one particular that stands out to me as the friend that I know, like, that I would say that's my friend.
Did you say three, Becca? Like 1, 2, 3, top left, the top line on the right?
This?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's number 3 is how I see Bassam on a daily basis. Number 1 through 12 is how I see Bassam when I start to speak. And it goes through this range of emotions and winds up in this grumpy kind of mess. Yeah, the top right, Nina saying the same thing. That's you, brother. That is thoughtful and intelligent and just engaged That's you, man.
And
Right there.
that falls under pensive,
Pensive.
right?
I wonder
my-
too. So I'm thinking you had a previous profile picture. I don't know if it was your Facebook or Instagram one
Yeah.
that was posed very similar to that. So I'm now wondering like how much of my perception of Bassam is being shaped by this profile picture.
You know what? So for me, it's this one, but I can see this one too, and I think that's because so often when anytime you speak to Bassam, he's paying attention to what you say. He's really listening to what you say, and he's engaged, and he often will touch his face. And if you watch him for the whole rest of the show, he will be doing it. He will do that often. But in those two, I think the engagement with the camera and the kindness in your eyes, which is a defining characteristic of you to me, I think really shows.
Which is the
through
first one
in
that you
those.
pointed to? I missed that.
This one is you for me, and then this follows.
Yeah,
But these
that's
two,
Joy. By the way, that's Joy. The second one is Joy.
these definitely, yeah.
I'm curious.
All right.
What's the difference between 1 and 2? What is your emotional?
One is excited, and the other one is just pure joy, joyful.
I love that.
Cool.
So Nina also, as Matt mentioned, saying top right. Jean saying number 5 because it's polished. Then Jean saying my
Contemplative.
perception
Number
of
5
Becca
is
was based on her profile picture. I was terrified of her for a long time.
I'm still terrified, Gene. I'm still terrified.
That terrifying intellect is what it is. Okay, so it was super cool to hear kind of what your process was for this, Bassam. Kat is not, unfortunately, she's not able to be with us tonight, but this was the self-portrait that she shared. And yes, and I wish she was here to kind of explain. I know a lot of her self-portraits, she does very much like, I'm going to go see what happens. And for me, this one encapsulates some of that energy that you have from her. You never know where Kat is going to take you or what she's going to say. And I think there's so much energy in this image, and that definitely screams that part of Kat for me. Do you guys have any kind of just initial thought on the image?
I just love everything about it. I love that her legs going one way, her dress is going another, her hair's going another. It's just, there's so much motion, so much movement, so much it's controlled chaos. And to me, that's Kat, is absolutely controlling chaos, you know?
It's
I love it.
Everything in every direction, yet her body is perfectly straight and stiff. It's weird.
Still in control, right?
Yeah.
Despite, yeah. And Nina saying
I totally read that wrong.
Me too.
Totally read that wrong.
Me too.
I wish she was here so she could share a little bit, but I'm sure she will tell us when she gets a chance. So we'll swing over to Matt really quick. We'll try to get these done so we have plenty of time to get with the wonderful ones shared by our community members. This was Matt's self-portrait. So explain. Oh,
yeah.
Before we do that, Jean really quick said she's always teasing us with her beauty, always leaving us wanting more, and definitely chaos under control. That's a great description. All right, Matt, go ahead. Why are we sawzalling our head?
Oh, it's a lot less painful than dealing with the home renovation. So I'm going through the constant thread in my life right now is just complaining about the fact that I took on way too much when I was doing my house renovation. So it's devolved into controlled chaos. And last week was a really hard week, or was the prior week to that, or the prior week to that, or the prior week to that, which were all really painful. It's just gotten to the point where trying to balance work and balance the home renovation and general contracting, the whole thing, and hemorrhaging money and hurting all these cats, right? All this stuff was just kind of getting to me. And I said, you know what, let me go do a self-portrait. I had some other stuff in mind that I wanted to do based on some tutorials that I'd seen Becca do with some skin texturing and words and all sorts of things. I was all over that, and I really wanted to produce something and get validation from Becca is really what I wanted. That's never going to happen. So I did
all
this
any
instead.
of us really want is to get validation from Becca.
Get validated by Becca.
You get a validation. You get a validation. But Sam gets a validation.
That makes me feel so individual now. That's wonderful. So I had the Sawzall in my truck, and I just grabbed it and was at the studio, and I said, why don't I do this? And the intentionality behind it was to show darkness, heavy vignette, a lot of texture, a lot of clarity slider and texture slider way up to make it feel like sawdust and chaos and saw blades and all that sort of thing. So, I did a lot of these in a very comical way, as well as you can imagine. But this one felt most at home to me. And of course, my friends were like, your safety's not on, your finger's on the trigger. And I'm like, guys, it's a control. Okay, fine. Internet.
Okay, fair.
Internet. So, but that's the whole story behind this self-portrait. It just felt timely and relevant, and that's why I did it.
What I love about this is it's a reminder that a self-portrait doesn't always have to be let me dig deeply into who I am and see if sometimes it's just, this is how I feel right now, right? Like this is just right now. And for the rest of your life, if you were to look back and see this, you'd be like, yeah, that is exactly what those home renovations felt like. I wanted to cut my head off.
I kind of did it for the Facebook memory, right? So like 6 years from now, when I'm feeling really good about myself, Facebook will come back,
right?
And just be like, here you go. Here's how you felt 6 years ago. And I can't wait for that day.
It's going to happen.
So did anybody take it out of context and think something really bad is happening? Or, I mean,
yeah, totally. And I'd love to sit here and be like, no, everybody got the joke. No one got the joke. And there was a lot of concern for my welfare. There was a lot of, wow, you really shouldn't do that. That's a little triggering. And I was just like, guys, are we at the point where we can't even joke and laugh? This is a whole nother podcast, but we're at the point where I'm like, if you know me at all, this is nothing but tongue-in-cheek fun. And if you don't know me and you're making these comments, then maybe I'm someone you need to mute for the next 30 days. But yeah, that's really all this was just fun, having fun, complaining. That was it.
Yeah. So Justin Jackrabbit is here, our newest member of the Artist Forge. Justin, welcome.
Nice.
Glad to have you with us. And I think, Matt, like your expression is so convincing, and that's probably why for a lot of people, they were like, whoa, he does look really sad. Like, he looks very not happy. But I'm glad, like, at least in the group, we had the context of knowing what was going on. And so everything tied together, which I think really does tie into the visual literacy and what we've talked about so many times, which is the difference that context lends to our understanding of an image, right? So for a lot of people who saw this, they were like, no, we need to check on Matt, like right now.
There were a couple of interesting things that I actually did put some thought into. I wanted the cooler tones with the yellow. I wanted blue contrasting against the yellow. I wanted me to be neutral, right? As neutral as possible. There's a little desaturation in there to make sure that happens. But this backdrop was one that I painted myself, and I liked that it had this kind of concrete texture to it to add to, the construction vibe of it all. So believe it or not, there was a little thought that went into it rather than just like, let me please Sawzall my neck. But yeah, it was interesting. The more that I got into it and more I started kind of like Bassam playing with expression and playing with, how these images were coming out, I probably took 50 or 60 and would be happy to show you the throwouts. But yeah, that's kind of what went into all of this. So anyway, I'll kind of get off my soapbox that is falling apart anyway.
No, love to have it. And we'll look at the last one. I'll go through it really quickly.
I'm still counting teeth fillings. Hold on.
No fillings, by the way. Never had a cavity. Don't have any fillings. So
there. Okay,
let me drink
just really quickly so that we can get on to our awesome community members and the beautiful self-portraits that they shared. So this one is mine. And for context, I don't like to take self-portraits generally at all. As we were talking about them during the self-portrait, morning walk, I had this shot pop into my head, or this image, I should say, pop into my head. And I just knew that I needed to do it. And I wanted to leave enough of it open for interpretation that if somebody didn't know me and they saw this, hopefully some aspect of it would still apply to their own experience. But there were definitely really considered choices made. I wanted the light coming from above and a little bit behind, because there's something about overhead lighting that always feels like God did it, I guess. It's that spotlight, like that single, very purposeful, it's in this one place. It's like a finger, like beep, this is what we're paying attention to. So I knew I wanted to do that. I knew I wanted the flower growing out of the vein because that is symbolic. I, at first, initially had thought I wanted to use a red rose. And then I thought, well, I could use a carnation because that's my birthday flower. And so that might be a little bit more play to me. But choosing a white rose, which has some ties to things like innocence, also could really translate to not only experiences I've had in my own life, but I think a lot of other people as well. And the question of, well, what happens to your innocence? Is it taken by circumstance? Is it given? What are all of these different questions maybe that could be tied to that? But the main thing for me was just wanting to explore some of those feelings of the responsibility that we have to the people around us, but also their entitlement to us and how relationships give you almost an entitlement to other people, to their time, to their effort, to their energy, all of those things. And the relationship between what we give and what's taken from us and how that feels. And this was maybe the best for me, I guess, exploration of that. My brother had responded. He's like, there's always flowers growing out of you, or there's always like plants growing out of you. I think referring to the mother image. And definitely this is obviously a recurring theme for me internally. So, yeah. And then I don't know how well can be seen in small, but there's, some plugs coming out as well, just to kind of drive the point home.
It's interesting. You had another portrait, not a portrait. Sorry, you had another image once. Remember with the tree growing out of the wound? So
yeah, that's the one my brother was mentioning. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say the exact same thing. Yeah. Immediately seeing that.
Life growing from either death or a wound.
We were talking about multidimensionality, Nicole. Maybe it's time for you to spread your wings a little bit. I absolutely loved this image. As soon as I saw it, yeah. I fell in love. When we were texting earlier and you're like, I'm off to do a self-portrait, and then this is what came out of it, I was absolutely
what did you
blown
say?
away
You need a
by
hand?
it.
Did you ask her if she needs a hand?
I was just going to validate her afterwards.
She just got it.
No, everything about this was so, in my opinion, perfectly done. I started wondering the number of petals on the rose. Does that represent the number of people in your family and where things are being taken from? And is there a point each hand is represented? Like, I really started getting into it because I know how much thought you put into the self-portraits. So yeah, this fascinated me. I was truly blown away by it. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous image.
Yeah. I realized afterward that there are 4 hands and I have 4 family members in my immediate family outside of me. I didn't realize that until after I had included it. And it's interesting. Another part of the conversation I was having with my son, and we were talking about mastery. And as I'm reading, my brother sent me a copy of the Tao Te Ching, which I've mentioned. And one of the things that is extolled in there is the fact that what you want to do essentially is lose yourself within the task so that you become it and you're not separate from it in a way. And I think that that's that level of mastery we talk about when you start doing things based on impulse, on intuition, not necessarily always thinking your way through it. And oftentimes we realize in retrospect that we've done things that still somehow relate to our life. And I experience this a lot with novels. I often don't know what themes I'm working my way through until I am rereading it after it has already been written. And then I go, holy shit, I can see what I was working through here when I wrote that. And so absolutely aspects of this were purposefully thought through. And other ones I went, oh, I can see that in my life. I didn't necessarily think of it at the time, but I absolutely can see how some of that comes into play. And I think all of us probably have experienced this at some point when you just feel compelled to do or make a thing and you don't really have a good excuse for yourself until you look back at it later and you can see the whole circumstance rather than just being inside of it. And you go, oh, all of these additional things were going on and I can see how I was influenced by those circumstances. So, yeah. Sharon saying pieces of yourself. Sarah, hello. Saying so good to see everyone. Thank you. I appreciate that. Little by little, bits and pieces of our beauty are slowly pulled off. It's amazing how much our subconscious rules our art. I agree. I think that is one of the coolest parts of making art, which is going to lead us into seeing the beautiful images that were submitted by our community, beginning with, I think this was the highest rated image, I believe. I could be wrong. I'll have to double check, but by Erica Manning. So we're going to take a look at this. If you have never joined us on one of these lives before for the visual literacy part, what we do is take a moment to just look at the image and allow it to make us feel something. And then we share what this image is making us feel. And once we have established that, we go back and we use those visual literacy skills to see if we can figure out what artistic techniques the artist has used to make us feel something. So start by having a look at this gorgeous image, see what it makes you feel, share that in the comments. Do you need me to zoom in, Becca?
We can wait. We can wait to zoom in.
Nope, I can zoom. Start
I want to see the what's on her head.
Crown of roses, it looks like. Anguish, Sharon is saying. Uneasy. Lost love. So I won't share Jean's quite yet. I will share that in just a moment because there is some context there. So if someone's watching on YouTube, they might not have that yet. So we will share that. Hang in there, Jean.
I'm like Nina, heartbreak, loss, more heartbreak.
There's so much tenderness in this. So much tenderness and so much love amidst all the uneasiness and the loss that's pretty clear. It's just, God, there's so much love here. So much love.
I mean, grief is the flip side of love, right? You don't get to have one without the other.
Mm-hmm.
Same.
Yeah.
Deeply. So I'll go ahead and share Jean's observation. The caption gave it context. It immediately took me back to January when I lost my father. I identified with this emotion so much. As a fellow having lost a dad, I absolutely same. I think she captured the emotion of feeling what you wouldn't give for the touch of a hand one more time, no matter who it was, you know. But I think if we're starting to pull on some of our visual literacy skills, the fact that the hand is coming from above says so many things. and also it's a disembodied hand. And so you could imagine being here and pretending this hand is the hand, right? And the light is beautiful as always.
And the eyes and the way the tears, just like the tear troughs.
The simplicity of the muslin shirt as well. I agree with you, Bassam. The eyes are just, that is what got it for me. That's what just absolutely crushed me. But the simplicity of the muslin and the darkness coming from above, and the only thing you see is the real light in the arm itself, like this ray of light from above. Just, God, there's so, I love Erica's work. I'm a huge fan, and this is
another silver, if not gold, potential at the Portrait.
So emotional.
Yeah, and I'm laughing only, but by the way, just to point out that the bottom undergarment is not part of the picture.
Yes, that is the background.
It looks like it's a continues down.
Yeah. Nina saying that the how honestly she's emoting, which is absolutely true. It can be really difficult to give yourself that vulnerability in front of a camera, but that expression is a real expression, which obviously makes the communication of it that much more powerful.
And it's so well balanced, the framing, I just absolutely love this picture.
I agree about the simplicity of the clothing as well. And the fact that the left side of her chest is exposed. That's where your heart be, the white, which is both innocence and purity, but also grief. There is a lot subtextually there as well. The fact that the roses are rose buds and not fully open flowers, I think, and roses have thorns. So there's a lot, I think, there that just add really subtle, beautiful details. In fact, this isn't something we always talk about, but when we're looking at how we coach expression in the models we're working with or the subjects that we're working with, a lot of the small details of emotion are shown in the body. And if you look at her neck and the way that these tendons and muscles are pulled tight, that is a sign of distress. Yeah. So that even that plays a careful role in the language of this image, and the fact that her hand language is so soft as well. Just so much there to read and to appreciate.
And, from a technique standpoint, the mastery of dodging and burning in this is phenomenal. To give it that painterly look, to give it the emphasis in the right locations, and have you're drawn to her elbow and then pulled right up into the arm, and you're like, oh, I get it now, and there's just such mastery in that. I get lost in stuff like this. It's so gorgeous.
Agreed. Any final thoughts, audience members? We've had a lot of really great insight that the pain and loneliness is heartbreaking. Yes, Erica agreeing. Good catch, Bassam. The framing is everything. Somebody wants to give you a hug.
I just noticed
that might have been Sarah. Yes.
I just noticed something we didn't talk about. You talked about the muscles in the neck, but also look at the forehead. Look at the formation in the brows, between the brows. There's
nicely
no
done.
flinching.
Well validated, Erica.
Validation for Erica. Yes, there's no flinching from that emotion. This isn't an effort to try to make myself pretty, right? To cry pretty. This is allowing grief to express itself the way that it needs to in the body. And it's heartbreaking and beautiful, and a testament. The grief we sometimes are able to emote is a testament to the love that it is grieving for. And it's clear the love, like you were saying earlier. Yeah. Oh, it's so good. Okay, we have to continue to soldier on. this image by David Marriott, self-portrait that was shared. I'm super excited to chat about this one. Whoops. So friends in the audience, we are going to, before we get to that, Erica saying, exactly decided not to use the images that I was doing a really ugly cry. So remember, we're going to have a look at this image. We're going to figure out how it makes us feel. And then we're going to share our feelings, and we'll try to break it down after that and see if we can figure out what he did.
This is so weird. I love it.
It's so great.
Disturbing.
Yeah, I'm super creeped out, but I'm so drawn to it. This is definitely up my alley. Like, love the way this is making me feel so uneasy.
This looks like what my anxiety feels like. So it's hard for me to give it a singular feeling, but that's the best way.
Yeah.
Your anxiety looks like David? That's not cool.
That's not nice at all. So let's see. Tired of living in this world, hiding from something. Like, is it denial, not wanting to face something? I feel a multiple personality vibe, torturing the single individual, disturbing also the word that Erica would use. Jean says facing giants.
Yeah, I could kind of see that. I'm trying to find the right word. Like intentional blindness, almost,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
It's hiding.
The
I like the see no evil feeling.
Yeah.
Well, you've got so many of these other faces, right?
Mhm.
You've got the upper left-hand corner with creepy eyes. You've got the judgmental face on the right. You've got,
Is it terrible? I'm sorry. This looks like Lou Ferrigno.
Or a bit of Sylvester Stallone, maybe.
I'm just saying, it looks like Lou Ferrigno when he's playing the Hulk. That's all. That's a good Ninamite. Denial.
Mm.
Sorry, Matt, go ahead.
No, I was just saying my eyes keep wandering around and keep finding new things. This is like one of those highlights puzzles, like where's the hidden raccoon, And I'm like, where's there another face? There's one in the clouds and there's one here. And are those fingers really eyes? Like, all that sort of stuff. And I love when I find an image that I'm constantly pulled into and I'm looking for more. That tells me the artist has definitely done their diligence in trying to craft something that captures attention. And for this is, I saw it in the group and I didn't look at it as closely. I knew it was kind of a creepy image, but now that I'm seeing it much more close up and seeing the work that went into it, I really, really am impressed with the amount of work that went into this.
Yeah.
Let me talk through what I'm trying to talk through myself. First of all, I love the repeating patterns with his shirt, the folds in his shirt, and the fingers up the face. That's something.
Yeah. I was thinking that too.
Striking. But I'm trying to make a story out of the hands because the way his hands are, if you see them, the word defiant comes to mind. So he seems to be defiant. Because I was wondering what's that second hand. I couldn't catch the guy on the left. It's hard to see the eyes. It's kind of dark. I wasn't sure if that's just a cloud or if there's a face, but now I see the face. So now I can explain the second set of hands. But it looks like, they're each of them are grabbing him and trying to either unvalidate him, censor him, do something. And then he's just defiant the way he's standing, the way his hands are crossed.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't care.
It's so interesting because for me, this, I know this is going to sound strange for a second, but because I mentioned that this is what my anxiety feels like. It is a kid hiding under a bed or under the covers from something he knows he can't actually hide from, but that act of hiding is still an act of defiance, right? Like, I don't see you. You can't see me. And when you're, at least for me, when I'm actively struggling against my anxiety, I may be standing here like, I'm fine. It's cool. Look, arms are crossed. It's cool. I'm fine. Everything's good. But up here, it's like an absolute chaos and disaster that is both, no, you don't see it. It's okay. It's not there. The faces aren't there. The clouds aren't real. It's cool. But also, that it is. And so that's definitely, for me, the feeling, but that's because it's my personal experience. And I really like your read on that, Bassam, of like having those shoulders down and those arms crossed, like, do your worst. I'm cool. I'm fine. I'm going to handle it. I can absolutely see how both reads would be legitimate in an image like this.
I just need to gush real quick about that light going up the shirt and the fingers. I just
Love it. The texture on the t-shirt, the texture on the
it's so
shirt.
great.
Yeah.
Rhythm. That's what visual rhythm looks like.
It is.
So David talking to us through Sharon's Facebook, saying, "Glad you find it creepy, Matt."
Well done, man.
Facebook user, sorry. So it's Justin, I think. Justin saying he's becoming used to them torturing his mind. You're close, Bassam. And then, definitely having some of those same. So it seems like we're both kind of right on that track of intention. And David, if you want to share your intent, we always love to hear that. But really, like the faces, there's so much, as you were mentioning, as everybody has mentioned, so much attention to detail here. And I have to say, let me just gush a little bit from a compositing standpoint. The blending is so good. It's so good. Well done blending the texture of the hand, which is very different from the texture of the face. It is practically seamless. So beautifully done there. Whoops.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous photo.
What do you guys think about the use of the green and then the black and white sepia? Like, what do you guys read from those choices there?
I didn't like it. It kind of put me off balance at the beginning. I'm warming up to it now.
I think
it was part of the disturbing part for me.
Is the color, like the
it's
of the color.
Kind of it at first glance. Now, David, do not take this the wrong way. At first glance, I was just like, oh, selective color. This is awesome. What 1990s wedding did this come from? And then I realized how the more I looked at the image, the desaturation, the lack of color actually built tension and anxiety. And I loved the way that it was used. So it went from being like, okay, there's some green behind it in black and white, to this like really coherent story. So love the green. I love the tones of green. I love this kind of it's not even pure black and white. There's color in here, right? And just the way it was all blended together gave me this sense of unease, but not distraction. And that's two different things. And I absolutely loved it.
Awesome. Yeah. The green, remember I mentioned that green is the feeling of anxiety for me, that those two things are tied together, which is probably, so I think David was definitely speaking my language with this one. Jean's saying, when I saw this image in the group, I decided not to submit an entry. Ironic how this made me feel unworthy. So let's smack Jean around a little bit for that one. But I think it does go to show sometimes that when somebody makes something you identify with really deeply, you wonder to yourself, how can I ever top that, right? Like if somebody's making something like this, I have no place doing it, which is how Mark Adamus made me feel about landscape photography. So I feel you there. But and then David's saying he can share the details in the group later. That would be amazing. I think we would love to see that and celebrate this image with you, because it's just disturbing in all the right ways. All right, we're going to continue on to Nina's image that she shared with us. Looks also to be another mixed media, which is one of those great things that we get from Nina often. So friends in the comments, take a moment, have a look at this, and then let us know how you feel. How does it make you feel?
So about being multifaceted.
I was just thinking that. Yes. Duality is the first word that comes to mind.
Yeah. I want to be pretty like Nina when I grow up. That's what I keep thinking.
I know, she's such a gorgeous human being.
I don't know, the word unhinged comes to mind.
I want this in my home, not because it's Nina, but because it says so much to me. There is so much expression, and I'm a sucker for double exposures and slow shutters, and there's just so much mastery here. The color, the way that it's all blended together, everything. I'm in awe of these. And getting to speak to Nina earlier in the week, and hearing about her process, I want this on my wall. I'm just saying, Nina. I'm just saying.
I have a question
Nina's
since
just
Nina's
saying.
here. Is this a photograph of the final painting? I'm just wondering about the light on the on the right hand side in particular, if that's reflection or if it's more true to the color.
The orange.
Not the orange on the
This so
the
blue
very-
over here and
that part. Yeah. The
Right.
lighter gray. I'm just curious
Yep.
if that's like physical light or not. Yeah.
Yep, looks like it. Oops. Yeah, I think for me, definitely when I look at this, the duality stands out, and really interesting to me that it's putting on the makeup, because it, at least for me, reads very much like this is who you be for everybody. Like, you still have to put on your lipstick, right? The other side of you may be screaming, somebody get me out of my body. And then the makeup is still that you put on your makeup and you go to work, like you put on your lipstick and you show up, right? So there's, for me, that's like a big part of the read, I think. Erica saying this is so beautiful. Blurred lines comes to mind for me.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's enough to use the blur and the to use the blur and the motion to separate the two images. But I like the way the saturated how saturation was also used to separate the two.
But you've got this blur with the image, and then all the texture from the brush strokes and the mixed media, and there's this weird tension between the two, like all this detail and then none of the detail. And I like that. I'm a fan of it. I love this mixed media kind of painted feel over it.
So I would assume, Nina, that was it intentional, or was it simply because of the warm, constant light?
Sharon saying putting on a face. I agree. I think that's four perfect words to put that. So Nina's saying that's from using a very warm, constant light, which makes a lot of sense for shutter drag.
Yeah.
And there's something, I've heard people use this term before, but there's something about desaturation being less real and high saturation being more real, almost as if the desaturated thing becomes illusion in a way, and the saturated thing is the real thing. It's an analogy sometimes used in like fiction, but like when you say somebody has a lot of personality, they're highly saturated, right? So that keeps springing to my mind for some reason. So Nina's saying yes, that the saturation, that warm constant light was definitely intentional. I don't know if you guys can hear my pug breathing hard.
I thought that was me.
I think she's warm. So any other thoughts on this before we begin to move on?
I just have gushing validation.
Mhm.
on
Gushing
everything
validation.
So far. It's just all so good today.
It's so good. I do love the difference between the colorations. They're so strong and yet constant. Yeah, love this.
She's wicked good.
She's so
Yep.
good.
Yep.
Nina, just in case folks are here that did not know, Nina, the winner of last month's challenge. So you will be able to go and listen to and watch her podcast interview with Matt. Tomorrow, we will have all of that shared in the group. So you'll be able to go snag that and listen to them chat about art and learn more about Nina and her amazing process. So
And you will definitely enjoy it. She is awesome.
she's
Awesome.
completely awesome.
And
All
Matt did a good job too, by the way.
Yeah.
She carried me through the whole thing. Not even gonna lie.
Validation.
More validation.
Oh, geez,
Oh my
here
God.
we go
So
again.
now we are
Oh
going to
my
look at a
God.
beautiful image from another one of our amazing community members, Sisela. So we'll take a second just to
Jeez.
look at the image and then figure out how it makes us feel. Don't forget to share in the comments. Don't try to analyze yet. Just let it make you feel something.
Overwhelm. This is how I feel inside today. Thanks, Sisela.
You know, this feels like, when I look at this, I feel like this is what happens when you're all cried out and there's
Yeah.
resolve, right? Like,
I feel like there's an acceptance to it.
yeah. Like I have had my cry.
Sorry, I'm laughing at the comment. I don't know who left the "What are you doing to us tonight" comment, but I feel that.
That was Sarah,
That was
Yeah.
me for my alternate account.
right? That was Sarah. Exhausted, Erica saying. Yeah. This one made me want to weep.
Yeah, there's the word that I keep coming back to is resignation. Like
Yes.
I'm just
Yeah.
resigned
Or-
to feeling
Yes.
like this.
Yeah, or desperation.
Yeah. God, this crushes me.
It doesn't hurt that you know Sisela, right? So being able to see somebody that you love and you care for with this expression on their face, that context just makes it even. My mama
Yeah.
saying, I feel heartbroken. Nina saying, it hurts my heart, like I give up. It's interesting to me because when I look at this, I don't see, when I look at this, it's the feeling of when you've grieved over something and now the crying, you've been cried out, right? Like the crying it's done, it's run its course. And you look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, okay, here we go. That's the feeling that I feel when I see this. And probably because I've felt like that before, you know, looked at myself in the mirror and went, it's time to keep moving.
It's,
You know?
You're depleted.
It's every morning.
You're depleted.
No, even
Defeated
for
is
me,
a good
definitely
word.
it's not defeated for me.
No, I didn't
It's
say defeated. I said
Oh.
depleted.
depleted. Yeah.
Mhm.
But still there's a reservoir of strength there. I mean, she's looking us right in the eye,
Yeah.
you know? And there's still some reservoir of strength there that can make a connection with the viewer and be like, haven't backed down, not broken. You know what I mean?
And this is so indicative of Sisela's style too. She's a, like a one light shooter for, a lot of the stuff, one constant light at that. And there's such a, again, I'll use the word mastery of using that one light to pull out the right emotions. And I've seen her use it in very bright contexts, in very dark contexts. And it just shows such a, an understanding of light and how it creates certain emotion, adding in the shadow under the eyes, adding in the tear, not necessarily composite, but just like adding to the mood of the light is so powerful. The fact that her red hair, so bright, gets kind of lost into that darkness, and you're drawn further into the face, and the highlights under her eye and the tear is just so well thought through in how it's edited and how it's shot. It's so incredibly powerful. And yeah, this is one of those things, you see this true pain in the eyes, and whether she was feeling it or not at the time, but the emotion in this is off the charts.
It's interesting too. I mean, the expression is so subtle here, especially in contrast to some of the other images we've looked at tonight. And I mean, the level of acting in a self-portrait, or not acting even, I think is maybe something we could speak about later, or at another time. But it's so very subtle where the tension is, and the eyebrows, and the openness of the lip, and
The lip.
yeah. But it's effective in that subtlety. I don't think it would have been effective if it were more dramatized.
Right.
Oh.
Sissel saying, "Oh, I was feeling it. Darkest time in my life."
And kudos to you for actually getting in front of the camera at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And showing it to everyone.
Yep. High five, sister.
So strong. It doesn't hurt that she's just a stunning creature of a human being as well.
Oh, there's that too.
She got that going for her also. Oh, yeah. Such a facility with the tools, right? Like we've talked before about that, but absolute facility with the tools of being an artist and knowing how to communicate with the tools that you have. I don't blame you. Sissel is saying, I hate looking at them today, and that can absolutely be the feeling when you record those things. Is this Sarah? Sorry. Yes, Sarah. This is me inside, but I can't show it outside. Every time I see one of your photos, it just stops me in my tracks. Your images are so powerful, Sissela. Absolutely agree. Stark, striking.
Define this style for me where I know in my feed that's one of her pictures without looking at it, right? It's become that style, and it's phenomenal to me. Yeah.
Agree. All right. Any final thoughts before we move on to what I think is the last image we have to share today?
Beautiful.
Chef's kiss. More validation for Sissela.
Golf clap.
All right. So we're going to look at the final image from Tyler. I really love this one. I'm super excited to talk about it, actually.
Yeah.
So Tyler Clements, this is his self-portrait. Go ahead and have a look at this and see how it makes you feel, and then let us know in the comments. This is longing to me. This is, I want to be there. Am I supposed to be here? Like I see it on the other side of this bush. I want to be in where that's at, but I don't feel like I'm supposed to be there. And maybe somebody caught you, and can I be here? Like that's the feeling I get when I see this one.
Getting a little wonder there too, like that sense of awe, and even growth. Trepidation, Erica says, is a good word for that.
Yeah,
too.
Nina saying caught.
Ooh.
Trepidation, as you mentioned, voyeurism leading to shock and awe. Voyeurism kind of comes into play for me too. Peeping Tom.
I see it.
My mom is saying like the grass is greener.
Yeah. Yeah.
I see this sense of wonder and wanting. Like, I love what's going on over there. How do I get that?
Yeah.
Kind of like what you were saying, Nicole.
The longing,
like,
right?
I didn't know this existed. Like, this is a world beyond my world. Look at that. You know?
And I would be lying if I didn't say that some of that feeling I get must come from the context of getting to know Tyler just a little bit and understanding a little bit of his story. And I'm definitely reading subtextually in from just knowing some of his past. I'm making shit up based on those context clues
And
for sure.
I'm just going to call back to what Bassam said earlier. That bottom half is not his body. It's not at all. Tyler's a much bigger person.
You know,
Caution.
what's interesting coming from Tyler, I haven't seen all his work, but it's so different than
It
his
is.
typical style.
Yeah.
Like if it wasn't his face, I would never guess that that's him.
Totally.
You know, I've seen, you know, I love all the technical part of it. You know, the retouching, the color palette, the mood, the kind of the hues and the color mood in it.
I'd love to see more of this from him.
Yeah, me too.
Totally. The context
His eyes are killer.
yeah. And again, with that subtle expression working really, really well. I was thinking also about that context of what we, you know, knowing Tyler and where he's at and his art and his life and everything right now. And I shared this actually in my Instagram stories a couple of weeks ago. And like out of everything on his feed, this is the one that really stood out to me because it is so different than the rest of his work and his client work. And it is, I feel like, so very raw. Like there is this candor to it, even if you didn't know it was him. And I feel like it comes through very well.
I would agree. It really almost looks to me like a piece of key art.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I could see this is a Netflix show. You know what I mean? Like this is yeah.
Can we just call attention to the fact for just a second at how perfect his hair is?
Well done styling, Tyler.
So perfectly styled. That can't possibly be mousse in that. That is natural and God-given. That's wonderful.
Maybe he's born with it.
Maybe he's born with it.
Yeah, I have to echo what Becca said too. I think the candor, the honesty of the expression, and the fact that it is subtle enough. I think all of us have felt something like this. There's no caricature in this. I think that's, you know, oftentimes when we see emotion, it's exploitive. It's like push it as hard as you can get so nobody can mistake it. When it's subtle like this, you can wonder to yourself, is this longing? Is this shock? Is this betrayal? Is he seeing his wife cheating on him with the neighbor, right? Like, is he looking through the fence and saying, you don't know. It could be a myriad of emotions there that we can read into it based on our own experiences and our context and the visual library that we bring to play when we read an image. I mean, there's, you know, you can imagine almost, well, I don't want to say almost anything, but you can imagine many different scenarios in which somebody might be looking through a plant or a bush or whatever and making this face at what they're seeing and still have that be legitimate.
He's playing peekaboo with his son. That's another scenario. His young baby.
There's something in the eyebrows that I think is really defining in this expression. Like that's where
it's the up tilt in the middle.
Right. It's very, I feel like it's particular. And I think that's what makes it a little bit ambiguous, but it feels very earnest.
Mm-hmm. Oh, earnest is a great word to describe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that coupled with the open mouth, I think really, really plays into it. And the fact that the eyes they're fully open, but they're not bulging. So there's a place that your eyes can sit that's a natural place versus a squinted place, and it's still a natural open. And the middle raise is a very often accompanies sadness emotions or sadness and surprise emotions. There's no raise here, which tends to accompany like shock or surprise. This is usually an empathetic response or an emotional response to something.
I just got to say on the color, it's great too. I feel like
it's so good.
The leaves and the eyes are like the exact same shade of green, at least on my screen.
And the choice of brown, I think,
it's reddish. Yeah. At least it's looking red to me. So it's got that contrast, but it's not, punch you in the face red.
Yep.
I
think the ambiguity of this is the strength of it.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so we've already gone significantly over our hour, but that's just how it happens sometimes. So now it is definitely time for us to think about, having seen some of these really incredible self-portraits shared by our community members, which one do we feel the most connected to, that communicated to us in a way that we just can't ignore? If you were in the comments today and you've been here for the whole thing, let me run over these one more time. So we have, of course, this really fantastic, ambiguous, but emotional and really technical image that Tyler shared. Deeply emotional, beautifully lit image from Sisela. Let me zoom back out there to full thing. This really fantastic self-portrait from Nina that has this kind of dual sided to it. This deeply emotional, also one. Deep emotion seems to be a real theme here from Erica. And then this that everybody agreed was disturbing in all the right ways from David. So
Really tough.
One,
tough.
my poor Facebook user, is that Sarah again? Yes, Sarah. So I'm sorry, only one we can pick. There are so many that are so good. I think Nina, having been last year's winner, or last month's winner, because we featured her, for at least me, I'm happy being able to drop this one, even though it's absolutely stunning, because we featured her last month. So looking at these, zoom out you.
I know who I'm picking.
I know who I'm picking.
I know. I think I know too.
It's extremely tough, though.
They're all absolutely brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Becca, do you have a favorite? Okay. Matt, you start. We'll see if we all agree.
I was blown away and floored by Erica's. Everybody's is phenomenal, but Erica is the one that really just put something through my heart. I could look at this image all day and keep finding new stuff. Karma agrees.
This was mine also.
Interesting. No, they're so good. David for me. I think it's so out of the box, and you have to spend time with it. You have to look at it, and that's what does it for me.
So I'm the Simon Cowell here. All right. So
you're the vote.
He's gonna vote for himself. Watch.
To me, it's very difficult, but again, I have to go with my initial reaction, and it's what he said up there. Erica's. Absolutely.
All right. And
I love all of them. I think, anyway, blown away this time around. But this one has that extra something special in it.
Can I just say that I'm so impressed by the submissions that we're getting?
So good.
Our
community.
When I was talking earlier about comparison and validation, Nicole, could you please leave your clothes on until the end of the live stream?
Tank top, Matt. God.
Never know where this is going. You're drinking wine. So, yeah, no, the submissions that came through, that's not an easy decision to make amongst any of them. These were all phenomenal submissions. Phenomenal.
So we have a winner.
We do, Erica, by popular vote, which included, as I was looking through, Erica and Sisela tended to hit the most. Yes, I agree. It was, it's so hard to choose. I'm going to be bummed about everybody who did not make it this time.
This is how we just get them to make more art.
Right? Exactly. Make more. But I will tell you what I'm going to do is we are going to do an entire blog post featuring all of the self-portraits taken. Just celebrate everybody, get those backlinks to the websites, because everybody, the folks who did not make it into just the lives, still so good. Like, my God, if you go and look at those, they're so good. Every one of them highly purposeful, telling their own story, really exploring parts of who they are, and just mwah, so good. Our community is the absolute best. So, Erica, congratulations. Beautiful image. Thank you for blessing us by allowing us in. And I know everybody who has lost a daddy, we know this feeling. So thanks for giving that gift to us. All right, I'm going to go ahead and drop these out. No, we don't. Okay, we'll just stop the thing. That's what we'll do. So we had some great conversations today about validation. I mean, we experienced what that's like here, and then validation as it applies to who we are as business people and how we reconcile the kind of validation we get from our clients versus the kind of validation we get from people who just really love our work and maybe don't pay us. And then got to see how the desire for that and the exploration of self plays itself out in self-portraiture. And sometimes, as in Matt's self-portraits, we just need to capture how we're feeling right now, right? Like, this is me now. Maybe 10 years from now, it's not the same thing, but I can look back and this will always remind me of what this experience was like or what this time in my life was like. Other ones that really are looking at exploring questions about ourselves or experiences that we have, or exploring ideas that we relate to as part of our self-identity and that other people can see as well. And I don't think, at least from my perspective, and y'all will have to tell me how you think, but every single one of those images, there was something of me I could see in them, which made me feel even more connected to the artist. You can answer if you want. No.
Everybody's
Everybody's
I don't
like,
have feelings.
time to
I'm
be
not
done.
going to admit to that.
No, I think that's what makes self-portraiture so powerful, is that you do see a bit of yourself in a lot of what people create, right? And so, Nicole, yours I was really struck by, Sisela's, Erica's, David's, right? I can see little bits of myself in each one of them. And I think that's what makes it so powerful, is that we're resonating with the vulnerability of the person in front of the camera, right? And it's that little bit of shared experience, like, oh, I felt that way. I know exactly what they're going through right there. And I love that aspect of self-portraiture. It's like, I'm going to put myself out there, but it's not just me. I bet you $100 there's someone else out there that has felt this exact same thing. And in that, I find a little bit of comfort.
Me too.
It's interesting when you look at it. You call it self-portrait. You're calling it in the first person, so it's really your self-portrait, even though it's somebody else's, right? Mm. That's in a way what you're saying. I see myself in every self-portrait.
Becca, I know I watched you just about to say something.
I'm thinking of a poem that I saw on the internet, but I can't find the poem because I would like to read this poem because I feel like it applies, but I'm drawing a blank.
Find it.
And here I am going, there once was a man from Nantucket.
The first dirty limerick that popped into your head, didn't you? No, I remember actually, Becca, one of the questions you asked in one of the morning walks was, why do we look at art, right? And we had this really fantastic discussion. Why do we look at art? And I know the overarching theme that we seemed to agree on as a group was we look at it because it connects us to other people. And the self-portraits are such a beautiful example of that. And being able to look at somebody in a different country, in a different part of their life, a different gender, a different identity, a different everything, and go, oh my God, there's me too. And that just reminds us that we are part of a whole, and that these experiences that we have as human beings are universal. And I know that that's one of the things in conversations I've had with my kiddo. He will ask me, has anybody else ever felt this way? Like, this is hard. And I'm like, yeah, honey, you are not alone. And there's some comfort in knowing those tears we've cried and those struggles we've been through and those joys we've experienced and the times we think I'm putting on a mask for other people and the times we think I'm giving too much away. All of those things, all of us have at some point felt those emotions. And when we get to see that reflected in other people, it's just a reminder of our shared humanity and that we are not alone. And that can never be overstated or overemphasized or overappreciated enough, I think. Have you found it, Becca?
No,
Nah, we have to share it in the Facebook group then.
I will. And I will find it, but it was about saying same to people.
Yeah,
You might know the one I'm thinking of.
I think I do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I'll
But
find it
that's-
on Facebook.
Yes, that's when I talk about as artists, the fact that what we're doing is pulling out a little piece of our inside and holding it up and going, anybody else? Anybody else? And the whole idea is that somebody looks and goes, same, right? Like that's those moments exactly. Like that is why we make art and why we consume art is so we can be like same. And then for the times we haven't felt it, we get that empathetic experience where we can go, I absolutely now can imagine what it is like to feel that thing. And you people who feel that have become more human to me. And it's just so good. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm stopping my rambling. Everybody who joined us tonight on the Artist Forge Live, thank you so much for being here. This is the reason that we do this, is to get together with you guys and talk about art because it is the best thing. So thank you for coming. I really hope you will go forth and invite people to come be part of the Artist Forge. If we are here trying to forge artists together, we need community. We need different views. We need painters and illustrators and sculptors and everybody so that we can get together and continue to forge a greater, more holistic, more detailed picture of what artists do and who they are and how we can learn from one another, because we don't have a whole lot of sculptors in the group. And we could use a few more painters and people who can help us think outside the box of our own disciplines. So go let folks know that you're here. Would you? Tell them you're here. Tell them we're here. Come hang out with us. We want to learn from you guys. So for everybody who shared a self-portrait, thank you for your vulnerability and your bravery and your creativity, and for giving that gift to us of being able to experience that with you, for sharing your thoughts here in the comments today, for Matt and Becca and Bassam for showing up every week and being here. You guys are all amazing for doing everything that you do. I hope you will join us tomorrow morning. We will get together and have the last talk of the week on validation, and hopefully walk away feeling really, really good about this week and ready for the weekend. Remember, we haven't figured out next month's challenge yet. So
Are we doing it right now?
we can, or we can do a poll in the Facebook group. What do you think? Poll in the Facebook group?
Poll.
Let's do a poll.
Okay, let's do a poll. I'll get one set up. You have to go and put your ideas in that poll and then vote for what you would like to do for next month's challenge. In the meantime, Erica, we will be reaching out to you so you can do your interview with Matt. And also I will be sending you a link so you can share the images that we will make in a blog post. Erica's photos will now go up as the banner image for our Facebook group and our Facebook page. We are going to blast you guys everywhere and share how amazing you are. Remember, last month's winner, Nina Covington, her interview with Matt is going to be live. So go look for that tomorrow so you can learn about her and her amazing process as an artist. Be part of that conversation. Until tomorrow morning on the Artist Forge Morning Walk and Art Talk. Have a fantastic night, guys. Bye.